I will call to order the Monday, December 15th meeting of the Common Council. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll call. Ms. Schofield, if you would, please.
Alderperson Diaz.
Here.
Alderperson Doyle.
Here.
Alderperson Linder.
Here.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Here.
Alderperson Reekie.
Here.
Alderperson Steiner.
Here.
Alderperson Touche.
Present.
And Alderperson Yurs.
Here.
We have everyone present, therefore we have a quorum. Thank you for that, everyone. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. If there's anyone that wishes to speak this evening under public comment, now would be the time. If you'd come to the podium, there should be a sign-up sheet there, and if you would put your name and address on, and also state your name and address for the benefit of not only us, but for those at home. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak this evening? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? It's your final opportunity. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on then. Next order of business is the approval of minutes from the November 24th meeting of the Common Council. Those minutes were included with your packet. What is your pleasure?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Reekie. Were there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. Under Mayor's business, I wanted to thank everyone that participated and attended the Christmas tree lighting last week, and also the chili supper at the Senior Center. It was another very well-attended event. Everyone involved, the firefighters, Senior Center staff, a number of the alders were there, saw them, and so we thank everyone that was involved. A very, very great event, and it's something that the public always really enjoys. Under committee appointments, I do have one appointment this evening, and we have the gentleman who's in the audience. We have a vacancy on the Parks Commission, and the way our ordinances are is that the chair of the Parks Commission automatically serves on the Plan Commission. So this evening I would make the appointment and ask for your confirmation of Mr. Mike Getz to serve on the Parks Commission as the chair. Do we have a motion we have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Touche. Just a little bit about Mr. Getz. Most of us, I think, on the council know Mike very well. He has lived in the city of Verona for 14 years. He moved here in December of 2000. Initially, him and his family lived on South Franklin Street, and then they currently live on Harvest Lane. And they've been in that house since June of 2010. Mike has previously served on this body, on the city council. He served from 2003 to 2005. Plus, he had two stints on the ad hoc committee, one that oversaw the construction of this facility, and then also served on the ad hoc committee for the new fire and EMS station. We thank Mike for his service there. Mike is a former police officer. He was a police officer for 13 years, both in Evansville and in Milton. And he has served since 2004 he's had a number of different titles, but as a business agent, staff representative, and union rep for both the Wisconsin Professional Police Association and also for AFSCME. So unless there's, and certainly we don't want to forget that he also served an active duty stint in 1991 overseas as part of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. His service is with the Wisconsin Army National Guard. So if there are no questions, I will call the question on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Mike, you now are chair of Parks and automatically on the Plan Commission. We thank you for your upcoming service.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to be back working with all of you too. Thank you.
Thank you. That would conclude my report for this evening. So next we will go to the administrator's report. Mr. Burns, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you. A couple updates this evening. First, property tax bills have been mailed and should be received by city residents. As we're looking at holiday hours coming up, City Hall will be closed on the 24th and 25th of December, as well as January 1st, 2015 for New Year's Day. City Hall will be open normal hours on December 31st for New Year's Eve. Progress is moving with the fire station and EMS project. I've seen a lot of activity over there in the last few weeks. Included in the bills to be paid tonight are items for pay application number 4, which includes several of the contractors, including concrete, masonry, steel, and some of the additional work that's being done. All of the structural steel has now been delivered, so we did get through our issue where we had some delays in steel delivery, and the warm weather that we've experienced in December is helping us to get back on schedule with some of the delays caused by the steel and the cold weather that we experienced in the month of November. There's an event coming up, a state and local government partnership forum that will be taking place on January 8th in the village of DeForest. This is an event that's being sponsored by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and there's information on this event that was included in the Dane County Cities and Villages weekly update that came out earlier today. The event is an opportunity for local officials to meet with state legislators. The event starts at 2 p.m. And there is a request that if you're planning to attend that you RSVP by December 22nd, and the information is included in the update that went out today. Also wanted to report that the city has been working on its North Neighborhood Plan. That plan has been submitted to the City of Madison per the terms of our intergovernmental agreement. Plans in this joint planning area do need approval by each other municipality that's subject to that agreement. We wanted to keep that process moving, so that has been formally submitted to City of Madison with a request that they take action on that, which would allow us to continue moving forward with that process. That is scheduled to be introduced by their city council on the 20th of January. It would then go to their plan commission in January, and then go back to their council for action by their city council in the month of February. And then finally, just wanted to remind everyone that because there was a council meeting date moved to today, that there would not be a council meeting on December 22nd. The next meeting of the city council would be on the 12th of January. Be available for any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burns? Not seeing any. Thank you, Bill. Next, we will have the engineer's report. Mr. Gunlock, please.
Thank you. Do not have a formal report this evening. Majority of the public works projects have been closed down for the cold weather months. Epic is still busily building out there on their campus. Other than that, I would like to wish the council, members of the council, and all the city staff happy holidays and a prosperous new year. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gunlock? Not seeing any, Bob, but as always, we appreciate everything that you do for the city. When we say that, we don't say it lightly. We have a great relationship, a long-standing relationship and partnership with you, and we appreciate all the good work you do for us.
Thank you. I enjoy working here.
Thank you, Bob. We will move then to committee reports, and we'll begin with the Plan Commission. Mr. Linder, please.
Thank you, Mayor. For agenda item 9A1, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 14-854, creating section 14-1-8 of the Code of Ordinances Certified Survey Map Parcels.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Reekie. Mr. Linder?
This proposed ordinance amendment will allow more than 4 parcels to be created by a certified survey map for land zone, commercial, industrial, or mixed use. The city's current ordinance limits the number of lots that can be created by a certified survey map to a maximum of 4. The Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 1st, 2014 and voted 5-0 to recommend the approval of the ordinance amendment. So we're changing it from a minimum or a maximum of 4 to unlimited number of lots in a certified survey map. Parcels, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Are there any questions for Mr. Linder or for the staff? Mr. Touche?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a staff question. Can you speculate on why we had a limit of 4, please?
Mr. Sarah, if you would, please.
I don't have the answer to that. A question that was asked at the Plan Commission, I didn't have an answer then. 4 was listed in the state statutes. It's been there as long as I've been in my profession, which is over 10 years. Don't really have a good reason. I know municipalities had wanted this change for a while. Surveyors had wanted this change for a while, so the state made the change, basically giving municipalities the discretion to put whatever number we felt like in our ordinances. So, but I can't speculate on why 4 was the magic number. I think it was probably just put there at some point when people were probably overusing CSMs and surveys, and they probably reacted to it, and they probably scaled it back and said, let's make it 4, and everyone probably said, okay. But I don't have a solid reason.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve ordinance number 14-851, creating sections 18-1-8 of the Code of Ordinances, Certified Survey Map Parcels. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item 9A2, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 14-855, adopting an amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan, changing the designation of lands located within the West End Development and Urbach property located on West Verona Avenue from their current designation of mixed use with primarily commercial land uses to public institutional, with the condition that the proposed comprehensive plan amendment shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject property by December 1st, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Ricky. Mr. Linder?
Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Sayer has more on this, but the next few items have to deal with some of the parcels on that property. This proposed amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan would change the designation of lands located within the West End Development Urbach property located on West Verona Avenue from their current designation of mixed use with primarily commercial land uses to public, institutional, and commercial. The Verona Area School District is requesting a plan amendment to accommodate a future school use on the property. The commercial land designation is being requested by the Urbach Trust to accommodate a future commercial use on their property. Discussion by the Plan Commission including concerns about the West End location as a school, the commercial viability of the land, future grade configurations in the district, limited residential growth in the near future, and growth impacts on future school needs, and the need to purchase property now. The Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 1st, 2014, and voted 3-2 to recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment. So basically it was about 2-hour discussion. A lot of it had to do with, is this the right location for a public institution, and what are the other options for the school district? So there's a lot of questions for the school district on this. I don't know if Mr. Sayer has anything further.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Mr. Sayer, anything to add?
The only thing I guess I can add is the school district is here tonight. I'm not sure if they have any interest in adding any comments. There was a memo in your packets from the superintendent, Dean Gurrell. Dean unfortunately could not be here tonight, but like I said, I know the district is here, is more than happy to answer whatever questions you would have. But I have nothing to add right now.
Questions, comments, or anyone from the school district wish to make any comments? If you would, please, Denny, if you use the podium, please.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council tonight. I'm Denny Beers. I'm president of the Verona Area School District Board of Education, and I have been on the board for 12 and a half years. So it's near and dear to my heart, to be sure. First of all, let me just say that I really appreciate all of you in your role as service to the community. I know how difficult it is to step up and offer yourself for public service and deal with everything that entails. So I certainly want to respect your time in that goal, but I would like to offer a little bit of a preamble here to once again reinforce the need for the changes that we're asking you to authorize, and so that all of you are comfortable with your decision tonight. I had at the Plan Commission, and those of you who were there and heard this before, I apologize if some of it's repetitive, but I think it gives a good context to what we're doing tonight. The district, since I've been involved, has had consultants studying the issues of future growth, both from a perspective of the the raw numbers of population of student growth, which the UW Applied Population Lab handles for us, as well as where and how the depth of development is going to be in all of the parts of our district, which Van de Waal and Associates, Mark Roffers, has handled that. Now we have engineering with Jenkins Survey and Design with Jim Bricker is here with us this evening. So we have had continuous work on not just this property, but just the whole idea of where and when we wanted to expand. All of us had looked deeply into alternatives. We've had formal and informal discussion with many landowners over the last 10 years. This current proposal has come to us sort of as a confluence of those various studies that we've been doing and just the opportunity that came up because of the timing between the Vanta people and their wanting to move that property or change it, and the availability of the Urbach land with the passing of Peter Urbach's mother, and the trust being willing to make accommodations for us to subdivide that property. So that became a target for us that maybe was more of a target of opportunity, because that parcel was not necessarily targeted by us, but it certainly fits all of our needs and our recommendations from our consultants. It's close to the bypass, has good traffic access, good visibility. It's in the heart of our district. And as you know, Verona Area School District consists of 7 municipalities and parts of 7. And so we have a larger responsibility to make sure that we accommodate the growth in all of the sections of our district. And of course, we recognize that Verona City issues are not necessarily congruent with school district, but we definitely feel that there are very valid reasons for continuing to have the major presence in the Verona City, since that is our focus of our growth, and the western in particular, in the western areas. So that also is another piece of the puzzle that we are asking you to do, is because of the financial ramifications of this are very favorable at this point. We've got good offers on the table to the landowners, and our financial planning that we have done as a district allows us to offer this to the community at a flat mill rate from 2014 to 2015. So that's really a feature that isn't always necessarily going to be true because of the work that we have done on our budget planning. And the other issue that people have concerns about is, what exactly are we going to do with that? That's the part that gets a little bit more difficult to describe to you, since that it's a piece of the puzzle for many, many years to come. We don't have specific plans for that site. We know that we need accommodations that will allow us to have future growth in terms of elementary schools, multiple, middle school, and eventually a new high school. But that could be many years down the road. It's important to look at this from the planning perspective of a large, contiguous piece of property that we can develop on our own basis, on our own timing. Past years, when I was first on the board, and even before that, there were some times where the school district had to approach developers in mid-development to get school sites. It was difficult. We managed to get some good ones put together with the cooperation of the city in terms of adding parkland and just moving it around in the specific developments. But it's always much more difficult to come in after the fact and be looking for land on a more precipitous basis. This way, we've got the tactical tools available to us. We're way ahead of the curve. We know that eventually these areas will be developed, and we will be ready for them. And we are being responsible to the taxpayers by making sure that we get it at a good price, and it's a time when we can afford to do so. So I took the Plan Commission back to the days of Curtis Jones, and if you give me a little indulgence on that, because it is kind of near and dear to my heart. When we rededicated our football field this year to the memory of Curtis Jones, we looked into his past and his history and what exactly made him a worthy person to have his name on a football field. And he had been one of the leaders in the early days of developing the campus that we currently occupy. At that time, the school board knew that they were hemmed in by where the existing campus of Sugar Creek is, where the Sugar Creek Senior Center is, and they needed to buy additional property. People could not understand exactly why they went way out into the country up there on Main Street and bought farms that were way more than what they thought they needed. And again, it was foresight, it was somewhat controversial in the community, but leadership was shown, and they made those purchases, and that has served our community for now 50 years. That is kind of what you have to think of in this term. We know institutionally it's suitable for multiple different school types, and has the possibility, because of the large site, that we could maybe bring in other institutional and community partners to have some development opportunities there that are maybe things that we can't even think of at this time. So that's what we're asking for tonight. We're asking for the opportunity, number one, to change the comprehensive plan, which we understand that's a big thing, but a good comprehensive plan is only guardrails. Back in the history of Verona, there's been times when comprehensive plans have been changed, and sometimes to the good, sometimes to the ill. Overall, it has been adapting to changes that have to be made. And our task tonight is just to say, let us take our case to the voters, and ultimately the voters will be the ones that decide the worthiness of this plan. I appreciate your indulgence on this, and I'll entertain your questions.
Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Beers? Ms. Stile?
I do appreciate the school district's attempt to be proactive and get the best deal for the taxpayers by making this move or attempting to. You addressed traffic concerns and being close to the Beltline as, or bypass as an asset for this site. Has there been any research on safety and accessibility by other modes of transportation, say pedestrians or bicycling?
I'm glad you asked that one, because the bike trail is accessible to that site, and it certainly stays there. We have talked to the DOT and Jim, if I say anything wrong here, but there's rules about the at-grade crossings you can make, and we're well within the guidelines for that. And it's in all of the previous work that's been done on that site has the access road going out to Paoli Street, and that is something that we will just be working on as if we were the developers for that. So you would have, you also have the express bus line that goes right and makes a stop right out there. So that's something that we don't even have on the existing campus. So we have the Metro bus available, which is nice for some of our community members who live in Fitchburg who are unable to necessarily, it's harder for them to get to campus, so that could be an improvement that way. Otherwise, you know, if you just, what we've done is extrapolate the existing traffic counts that they were talking about with the stores that were supposed to be in there, and our traffic numbers would be less than what they would have on a Christmas season, for example. So that's an improvement.
Other questions, comments? Ms. Doyle?
Just a follow-up, you mentioned the bike trail and Paoli access, but as far as, you know, and this probably depends on what purpose this ends up serving and what ages, but as far as maybe pedestrian and bicycling coming from more the Westridge neighborhoods and across Verona Avenue, are there any specific accommodations or thoughts in that direction?
I'm sure that would be something that would have to be addressed, you know, exactly how you would have that going across there. It would, in a perfect world, you know, it would be nice if people could walk to that from across there, but we realize it's probably traffic intensive anyway, regardless of the school being there, so, but I'm sure there's considerations that could be made for that.
Go ahead,
And-
Ms. Dowell.
And I suppose that's just what I'm kind of getting at with my concerns, is just I know, you know, one of the things that we love about living on Main Street is that I can walk my daughter to school and it's very accessible, you know, and I feel more comfortable for, I know it's a nice milestone for students to be able to get themselves to and from school, especially as they get older. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns with this site, is that that might be an option that's not accessible depending on the age that this potential site could serve.
Right. Yeah, and it's impossible to exactly answer that, because if there ever was an elementary or a K-8 building or something of that nature there, that, you know, that does change that component. I think that there are nice bike trails that come from Westridge. It's just the, you know, the crossing would be the issue. And so I'm sure that I think that those are the types of things that engineers and so forth could work on. It certainly would be respectful of that, because, you know, bus entry and access, all those kinds of things are always the ultimate high concern.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Yurs?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the timeline, Appendix C in the memo. And I'm wondering, like in the 2015-2020 range, as you're building a new elementary school, is that going to be replacing buildings? And I guess same with the high school when we get to that point. Is that going to be replacing current buildings and those will be just removed, or will the school just utilize, you know, like Sugar Creek still, and also the older high school buildings? How do you see that
Right.
taking shape?
Yeah, and that's always a 100% valid question. It's just the kind of thing that is impossible to answer at this point. Having that palette available is a long-term solution for us. What we're working on in terms of short-term solutions is those kinds of questions that you have. But they don't depend on the availability of that land or not. It makes it easier, but ultimately, if we do nothing right now, we will face overcrowded high school at some point, and you'll be forced to deal with it, whether you again go to a different site or develop it within. But we don't want the pieces of this long-term puzzle are appropriating these lands right now, not appropriating, but authorizing these lands right now. And we have our Future Schools Committee, and we have our Epstein Ewing Associates as our architect are looking at those kind of questions. But that'll be the second phase of this. That'll be coming with those types of questions. And that will be brought to the community at a later date. But it isn't contingent upon this or not.
Further questions, comments? Mr. McGilvray? Go ahead. Mr. Linder?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little bit. And in the Plan Commission, a lot of the talk was, you know, is this the right spot for it? They were talking a lot about, you know, we lost some taxiing spots with the St. Vinnie de Paul and the church going in downtown. So that was brought up. I look at it a little differently. I think we should be good neighbors with their school district. This is a Verona area school district. There is potential, if they don't do this site and they're having trouble finding other sites in Verona, that they could go outside the city. I'm sure they don't want to, but I'm sure that's a possibility. So I'm in support of this. I think there's some issues with traffic we're talking about, but if you have it next to the neighborhood, then people complain about there's too much traffic in the neighborhood. If you have it where it's at, I think it's a little bit separated. I think there's, you know, especially if it's a high school, there could be more people driving there and getting in and out. I think access would be okay. That does include having access to Paoli Street, which was talked about as well, which is would take some work to get that done as well. But I'm in support of this. I think, you know, the people I've talked to, the biggest thing they want is they want to have the high school in Verona. That's their bottom line on what the people have been telling me.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bears. I know it's tough to be on that side, so if any of these questions are pointed, it's not at you, you're the school district representative.
Yep.
I'm on the opposite side of Jack at this point. I'm hesitant to make a commitment to change our strategic plan for development in that area based upon what you described as a target of opportunity. There's a real concern for me how traffic will be handled, and that's a discussion that I think should be had ahead of time before we start making changes to plans. All these things that come after this ordinance here would directly affect how we would be able to plan for traffic. We just made a very significant, or I shouldn't say we, but the city, in conjunction with Epic, made a very significant improvement to that off-ramp that right now is handling the traffic there pretty reasonably well, and I think into the future for some time, but there's no doubt that that is going to need to be improved again strictly for that employer. And if we start adding in bus traffic and child traffic, kids in high school coming off there at the specific time the kids usually come and go from school, I could see that running into some issues. So I'd like to have those kind of discussions before we commit to making a decision on how that piece of property would be developed. That goes back to the developers agreement that I did have an opportunity to ask Mr. Reeder about the developers agreement, and I guess that would still be out there quite a ways. But again, those are conversations that we had figured out in the past how these improvements would be made to intersections, and if we're now talking about a public institutional body buying this piece of property, it's basically incumbent upon us, the taxpayer, to figure out how that's all going to get paid for. So those are decisions we have to take into account. We were planning on having that tax revenue to help offset some of those expenses we knew we were going to have. I think we have a responsibility to develop properties to the highest and best use, and I'm not saying that this isn't the highest and best use, but I don't think we've had enough discussion about what, if that is the highest and best. You're asking us to make a decision, and as far as I know, we haven't even gone forth in the school districts. I don't know that they've done a study or put out there that the intent is to borrow a significant amount of money for future development of this property, and we'd be taking this piece of property out of future development until such time as the school district says that they're willing to or even wanting to, because it seems like there's it's a little vague right now at best. Would you agree with that?
In the sense that we don't have specific plans for it, yes. Okay. I don't agree with the idea that it's vague. I think the proposal itself has worked out pretty well, considering we have been on a compressed time frame because of just the pieces of this puzzle and the fact that this is an availability and as you say, a targeted opportunity. But that's part of the issue, because 100-acre parcels they're not growing on trees, so to speak, in this area. There's issues with virtually every place you look, and alluding to the traffic issues, this has the best already. And it was certainly anticipated to have significant traffic when you're talking about 2 big box stores. So I don't see, I mean, a school traffic is different. It has a different flow in the seasons, and it has a different daily use pattern, but it's certainly, it's not, I don't think, it's probably less traffic than a mall at Christmas.
And to that point, and it goes more back to the developers agreement, we're being asked to make a decision based on this potential, but we haven't worked out the specifics of how the developers agreement would pay for these improvements. In the past, the existing developers agreement has the developer paying for those improvements at such time that they are needed.
Right.
So if the school district's involved, the school district is going to be picking those up, or the city of Verona, and that's a discussion I think we need to have before we start saying that we're willing to do that now.
Sure. And obviously the school district it's kind of which taxpayer pocket are you getting it out of?
My taxpayer.
I agree with that, but any improvements that the school district would be responsible for would be parceled in a future referendum. So that would be part of the cost of the building that you would build.
So, and I kind of wanted to jump onto this, what you said about there's not a lot of 100-acre parcels. I completely get that. currently within the city of Verona. But if I look at what the city of Verona has done for its growth projections and its long-term planning for residential growth, I see a couple spots that make more sense to me than taking what is currently to be used as commercial property and developed as a commercial way and making that public institutional. And I'm wondering if you could just speak to the potential, what the school district has discussed from their point of view, where growth will happen to the north.
Sure. The appendix, let's see what letter that is. Appendix E in the packet will show the concentration of development in terms of what we have, our consultants, and what they've done is they've gone to city planners in each of our jurisdictions. The darker the color, the more dense it is. So that speaks to that. One of the difficulties, and those of you who are around during the merger talks, we talked a lot about the dark blob up there in the upper north quadrant. That is Madison slated, but you have currently, they have been, it's not maybe high on the radar in terms of when they will bring that into development, but that is close enough that we feel that we can service that with, at least for high school, from this site because of the access. It would be difficult to try and pick out a site up in that quadrant based on Madison's planning. We also have looked in terms of what Fitchburg has planned. Most of their development is not in our school district, but there are some in that area. So if you were to look and try and do something along Fitch-Rona Road or Grandview or some of those kind of areas, they're fairly isolated. There's very heavy traffic issues as the Target Orchard Point Center and Wayland Road. There's a lot of roads there that we would not want to have additional heavy traffic from a school site. There's also more jurisdictional issues because it's town versus Fitchburg's extraterritorial jurisdictions. The north neighborhood, we have looked to developing an elementary site there, but we had not felt that that was appropriate for high school. So those are kind of the overviews of that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. So the one that you were picking out before to the north is, if the color represents, is it density in this?
Yes.
That's a pretty significant density that they're
Yes.
showing there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's denser than anything currently developed in the city of Verona, according to the color map.
Correct.
And it is outside the city of Verona.
Correct.
I realized, to Jack's point, we're being good neighbors, but as a representative of the city council, I represent the city of Verona first.
Correct.
And we're talking about something that has a lot of density and a lot of pressure on our school district. You want to take property out of the city of Verona, make it public institutional, take it off the tax bill, and that creates a burden on everybody too. And I'm a little hesitant to agree again to something that's still in the air as far as I'm concerned, how that piece should develop to the north. Also, to the east, if you look at the potential for the growth of the city of Verona, for me, I look at a considerable amount of growth that can go to the east, and it is, I believe, Adam, it is currently zoned for residential growth to the east and north of Wayland Road. Is that correct? It's shown on the future growth map at any rate, not zoned, it's shown on the future growth map.
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, I believe you're correct. I think a good chunk of that area by Wayland Road, I think there's a small segment as you go kind of north and east of there. We haven't done a plan for yet, but yeah, there's a good chunk of land along that Wayland Road area that is planned for residential, kind of east of the Liberty Business Park area and north there as well. You're correct.
And it's also my recollection as being part of the Public Works Committee that's also land that would be serviceable by city municipal services in the future at such time as it was needed. Mr. Reeder is nodding his head. If I look at the city and where its growth potential is, we're somewhat limited right now to the north, our north neighborhood, which we're trying to get in. We're limited to the west because of our neighbor and some the Sugar River, basically. To the south, we're going to be running into problems with our ability to pump wastewater and water. So really our growth potential, the largest growth potential is to the east, which changes the center of where the city is. And for me, that makes more sense to be looking for a location for a future school that you're talking about, a really big one. And I understand the need for a big campus, but I just, again, it goes back to the target of opportunity. To me, it would be short-sighted for the city to commit itself to changing its plan and the use of that property in the event that the school district thinks it might be a good place to put it there, when there may be potential at other locations. So that's one of my reservations also. I think I'll stop for just now and let somebody else answer a little bit. I got a couple other ones, but I want to let anybody else jump in who might want to respond back.
I saw Mr. Yur's hand and then Mr. Steiner after that.
You know, I feel that ultimately I think the decision should be left to the residents of the school district and to the voters here in Verona on referendum. And I do agree with Mr. Linder that the high school should remain here in Verona and that we should be good neighbors. But I just wanted to make the comment that I also agree with Mr. McGilvery in some of in his questioning that things are quite vague right now, and it's hard for people to wrap their minds around. So I would urge the school district, as we come forth to a referendum, that some more plans can be laid out, and so people can really kind of see the vision that the school district has as they're going to the polls to vote for this referendum.
Thank you, Mr. Yurs. Mr. Steiner?
Thank you, Mayor. I was asked to present at the public hearing that you held at the Planning Commission, and the point of view that I was asked to present was the value of the school district to the economy of our downtown. Presently, the high school is right dead center, and they do wonderful purchasing from our businesses. And then if you've been around at noon hour, you probably noticed the influx of hundreds of people, young people, with money to spend going to our businesses. Easy access. The younger ones can walk, run, cut through yards. The older ones drive daddy's car, mommy's car, race through the neighborhoods, cause some problems, but they get to where they're going quickly because they have to get back to the school and they want to eat food of their choice. And the economy of our downtown, it depends on this school district being headquartered in the downtown, especially the high school, middle school aged people. And I would encourage you all to think about that economy, because we've been using this topic for the past 2 years. Our downtown needs our help. This is an opportunity to keep the downtown viable and to help the school district do what they're probably being told to do, stay in the city of Verona. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Mr. Diaz?
Thank you. I just want to say I'm supportive of this with some reservations. I share a lot of the concerns about traffic issues. Not, you know, I mean, the area has been designed to handle heavy traffic, but as was stated, school traffic is different than mall traffic, which is different than apartment traffic and whatever else. So I think that's something that we all need to be, you know, the city also be mindful of going forward, that we don't cause a giant jam up there. But I guess for me, what it comes down to is that the school district is a huge value for the community, and I think if we have a high school, I would love it to be in Verona. And as Alder Steiner mentioned as well, I think that the high school has potential to benefit commercial activity, even if it doesn't do so directly. So I guess just in conclusion, I do have a few reservations about traffic, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Other questions, comments? Ms. Reekie?
I just had a thought as Mr. McGilvery was talking about, can there be contingencies put on it that have to do with timelines, like that we could revisit the issue in, say, 12 years or something if the district has not moved on actually going ahead with a plan, like if they don't have a more secure plan, or if they haven't actually started building on that parcel. I don't know how that would work, but.
Mr. Beers?
Yeah, I don't really know how you would go about doing that. There's nothing in here. The short-term contingency is built in that, in the sense that it all reverts back as of December 1st, 15. So, you know, in that respect, if we're unable to get the community to come behind it, it's a moot point. That would give us two opportunities, one in April and one in November, to have the ballot initiative to deal with it. But as far as I know, I don't really know, and I mean, I'd be open to hearing about something like that, but it is difficult. I mean, once you make that move, it's pretty much the one fail-safe there would be in there, though, would be if the all of the traffic concerns and you know, all of that has to be worked out hand in hand with the city. I mean, that's not going to change. All of the ancillary road, the access road, all of that is built on cooperation between the city and the school district. Now, they might end up, we had talked about searching for federal funds or some other alternatives to try and bring some other money into the equation. And it will be one pocket or the other, and nod to Mac, but it's not like the city's going to get stuck holding the bag for that. It's going to be dependent on that ownership. If we are never able to utilize that land, a future board would be back in here to ask for a change of zoning and a possible sale. So a future city council would have that trump card over the district in their plans. But as far as timelines go, that's kind of the point, is trying to get away from that and say there could be something as soon as 5 years, but it's really designed to be a safety valve for many years in the future.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Mr. McGilvray?
Just a quick question. I think I heard you mention that the purchase price, this is more for my information and maybe for anyone who might be listening, the purchase price that you had worked out for this piece of property would not affect the mill rate. It's flat.
Correct.
So that's money that you've already set aside for the purchase of property somewhere.
No.
Or
our budget process. Chris, do you want to talk about that quick? Would you like let him,
Sure.
the expert, do that?
Thank you. This would be Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, I call him the expert. So, Chris Murphy, our business manager.
Welcome, Chris.
Sure. Good evening. What we were talking about is we try to do long-range planning with our mill rate projections to try to look at future growth that we think we may have and try to equalize the mill rate to the extent that we can. The district right now, we did a lot of building in the early to mid-1990s. We built Badger Ridge, we added on to the high school, we built Savannah Oaks out in Fitchburg. It seemed like that period of time we were passing a referendum every year or every other year. And typically that debt is 19 to 20-year debt, and a lot of it, and it's been the same for districts all around Dane County who are building then. You know, a lot of that debt is dropping off. What we did this year is because there was an additional $200 million we found out last summer that was going to be added to the tax rolls for, I think it was deep space that was going on. That was never in a TIF, but that was going on. That did increase our valuation a lot. And what we decided to do when that happens to school districts, the year that happens, that tax base increases, so our mill rate would dip way down, but then we lose state aid, and the following year it comes right back up. And what we decided to do that kind of kept our mill rate steady, but also allowed us to have this referendum and sort of be able to pitch it, you know, from the fact that overall it wouldn't increase our mill rate, is we defease some debt this year. It's kind of like paying down the mortgage on some long-term debt that we had. We levied extra to our debt service fund to keep our mill rate at about 12.04. And in your chart, we had that in there instead of letting it drop way off. And then the projections are with, if we pass a referendum in April, if we didn't pass that referendum, we'd be projecting a mill rate of 11.85 for next year. With that referendum in there, it's about 20 cents. You know, I mean, it does cost something, but overall, it would bring that up to about 12.05. So that's where we get that flatness, and we can say we'd be having, you know, be able to have this referendum and keep our overall mill rate flat. But the mechanism we were able to do it by was defeasing the debt this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. So the referendum is specifically for the purchase of the property?
That's correct.
That's what would be going out?
Yeah.
So it's the tail, and then the elephant comes later?
Yep.
Okay. And at some point, is the school district going to be in a position to tell us what the elephant looks like, as opposed to just the purchase of the property?
Certainly, and a lot of that's going to be driven by how fast the kids come. I know when we talk about the North neighborhood, conversations we've had with Adam and Bill, there's a lot of homes that come there, but I know that's driven by you know, the intersection at M and PD and when that gets done, and if it gets done sooner than later. I think we have the back 80 of the Zing farm that's already in the urban service area. You know, but that's undeveloped land. But certainly the big piece to the north is that North neighborhood, and depending on how quickly M develops and when that intersection is taken care of, I think that'll give us a lot clearer picture.
If I could, and this may be for you, Mr. Murphy, may be for Mr. Sayre or Mr. Burns. So the mechanism that I think Mr. Bears alluded to was the 1st of December 2015.
Mm-hmm.
In the event that the offer to purchase moves forward, the zoning gets changed, what specifically does that date do? What do you have to do? And I'm asking this rhetorically for people who are listening.
Yeah.
What does that date do for?
Yeah. What we need to do is go to the voters and get permission, and that date was based on doing that in April. As Mr. Beers alluded to earlier, it would give us a chance, if we wanted to come back again in November. But the plans right now were to do that in April, do the borrowing, and get everything closed up by December 1st.
All right. So, in the event that the referendum didn't pass the first time in Verona, which has happened in the past, would you be coming back to the city on December 1st, 2015, do you think, looking to extend this? Because it's my understanding that if it doesn't happen in 2015, it would revert back. Would we go back? Would we change our city plan at that point? Which would make more sense to me, because it should be an automatic thing if there really is, to Ms. Reeke's point, if there's some timeline in place.
I was just going to say that there is, I think we may be talking about two different things. Chris, there is a hard deadline for us to get our referendum language put together. So that's the January. That has kind of compressed this timeline. What I was saying is, from your point of view, that this is all, if we can't get it passed, it reverts back to the status quo, and our offers are written that way as well. So there would be no coming back. It's just we get that time and that's it.
Thank you. I would still say I have multiple reservations, but I feel better knowing that's in place. But in looking at what I have before me from the city, I don't really see anything concrete saying that from a city point of view, this reverts back to this date.
There's language.
Yep. Mr. Burns, if you would, please.
Yeah, the recommendation is that there would be contingencies on the action, so it would be conditioned upon the school district acquiring a property by December 1st, so that if that did not happen, then it would automatically revert back for both the plan, comp plan change as well as the zoning.
Okay, so it would
change.
include the comp plan. Very
Yes.
good.
Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I'm rereading this over and over again, we're stripping out the mixed use and adding public institutional, is that correct?
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, in a nutshell. So what's happening is the district is proposing to buy the Urbach property, which is east of the west end there, except for a northern 13 half. Okay, and then the rest of the Vanta property. So everything south of the apartments, and as you go west on West End Circle, they'll put a cul-de-sac in there. There'll be a stormwater pond and then one more lot kind of north of there. So on the screen here might be the best way if you want to pop that up for me.
No, I have the
Okay.
map. So that leads me to the next question. So the entire property is a mix of different zoning? Is it a combination? So is it all commercial? Is it all public institutional? I'm just thinking about it from a tax perspective, because right now we're getting revenue from the land as it's zoned today. When it changes, my understanding is that once we change whatever amount of land to public institution, that goes off the tax roll. Is that correct?
Well, I think right now the land is being used as ag. So right now it's being valued as ag. So whatever's being out there is being farmed, so it's ag value. Once I think the district were to acquire it, that's when the nonprofit, or that's when the taxes would probably cease to be coming for that property.
So it would remain ag until it passes referendum. Is that essentially the nuts and bolts of it?
From zoning or from use?
Well, I'm thinking zoning and just tax
Oh,
revenue.
yeah, so it wouldn't change, no, till we acquire the.
Till you acquire it, okay.
Mr. Sayre?
Adams.
It wouldn't become effective until they purchased it. So it would have to go through whatever referendum by December 1st, 2015.
Okay, and then if it doesn't get purchased by December 1st, 2015, does it then switch back to mixed use? And I think this is covered, but I just wanted to be clear in my mind. Mixed use, commercial land use?
Mr. Sayre?
If it does not get approved, it would go back to what it is today right now. So we can basically pretend none of this happened. It'd go back to PUD.
That works for me.
Urbach would be ag, and that'd be it.
Lastly, I'd just like to say, as I kind of list through the big topics in my mind as far as what's swaying my decision, I'm concerned about Epic and what it's doing to the surrounding area. I mean, even as I look at the growth projections that the school has given us, I look at the potential businesses, the economic value that Epic is bringing to our area. I think giving up that land to the school district, I don't think it's a wise choice for us in the long run. I am also concerned about the traffic, as was also brought up. I think adding Epic traffic at 8 in the morning or anywhere from 7 to 9 in the morning for Epic on top of the school traffic, I have teenagers myself driving to the high school. I see that as being a bit large potential or issue. But having the high school or potential future high school in the city, I see as a lot of value. And to Alder Steiner's point, there is a lot of economic value brought by the school, and I recognize that. And I think there is a lot of potential to develop more downtown by relocating the high school in the future. This is a really hard one, because I'm trying to think 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road exactly like the school's doing. I'm just trying to think on the city's behalf. And it's a real toss-up for me right now.
If I could speak to
Mr.
that
Bears?
just a little bit, thank you. One of the things, I haven't viewed this really as an either-or, because it seems to me that we've reached a critical mass in our community that maybe we didn't quite foresee when this was laid out in 2008 or 2007, whenever that was done. Obviously, Epic continues to be more than anyone's ever been able to imagine. And as you all know, they took the residential stuff out on the off Westridge there, and they have plans to go further. We don't know, we can't envision really necessarily what that's going to end up looking like. But in terms of being a draw, I think that was always one of the selling points of that original development was that's going to be a draw. It's an amenity. It's something that people will want to use and visit. Now the economy has definitely changed the scope of what they were able to do out there, and regardless if the school district comes here, something's going to be different there. Now, you know, it might still be commercial, but who knows? But a school itself can be a draw and an amenity to a community. That's one of the first things people look for when they come to a community. And the way we've envisioned this with maybe other community partners coming into play here, there could be other sorts of buildings that we could develop there that we don't have the room or the ability to place elsewhere. That's why the vagueness. It's not really vague, it's future planning use. It's like having money in the bank. You don't necessarily know what you want, you're going to use that retirement money for, but you know it's for retirement. That's kind of what we're talking about here. It's future. It's a banked reservoir of land that we can access. And when that is built out and preserving, and I think the other point that needs to be made is that nice commercial lot that is in the front of the Urbach property there, that will have intense value. And that's the kind of thing that we want to spur that development back along West Verona Avenue. And you are all familiar with the holes that are there and the agony that's been gone through on the changes to the bowling alley and the John Erickson property. I totally get that. But spurring some development right along Verona Avenue in terms of amenities, in terms of the types of businesses that people want to shop locally at, I think this is a plus point. And I know that having a viable, vibrant campus there is going to add to that mass. So I can't tell you what shape it'll look like, but I can tell you it'll be there. Unless it is completely, crazily out of sync, and 10 or 15 years later, some other school board president saying, boy, that guy was a dummy, should have never done that, and we're here to sell it. Well, then you still have the reservoir of a significant piece of property.
Other questions, comments? Mr. McIlroy?
Last one. So just to be clear, you're telling me that the intent is to hold the property maybe upwards to 10 to 15 years to develop it, but the referendum would, if it doesn't pass by the end of 2015, or the beginning of 2015, excuse me, December 1st, 2015, what would you be doing? Because that to me, those are two different things that
Tell
you're
you
saying.
exactly. Number one, that will just prohibit this purchase of a significant property. We'll still continue to have discussions and maybe we can find something else. But I do know this, in 5 years to 10, depending, there will be something happen. Now it could be accessing with a Herfel, which we haven't talked about that. That could be a place to go. We could do some internal work on a redesign or an upgrade of an existing property. Those are things that we will consider regardless. We might be at Fitchburg City Hall talking to them. Something would be, it's not going to, saying no to this is not the end. It just would be a different path. But it's well thought out. It's opportunity. I grant that. It's kind of came up because of these processes that we were working on. And it's a unique situation. To have two landowners agreeing, and it was multiple meetings trying to get these details worked out. And it is a compressed time frame because they have issues that they want to address and they want to get them solved. They have been gracious in extending their deadlines the way it is. I get that it feels rushed sometimes, but it is an opportunity. There's a time and an opportunity here.
Other questions, comments? I'll just make a brief comment. I was able to state my case at the Planning Commission. We'll have more opportunities in the future. I commend the school district and the school board for moving forward in the manner that they have. I know that there's more details that will be coming, and that's just the way it is. But in the conversations, the discussions that we've had to this point with the school district, they're taking not only a short-term approach, but a long-term approach, and I think they're really doing what's right for the community. We have heard over and over from people that they want the high school to remain in the city. I think that's extremely important. Most people that I talk to about why they moved to Verona, it's because of the school district. It's not how we plow the streets or other services that the city provides. It's the school district first, and then it's some of the other amenities that we have to offer. So again, I know that there's more details to come, but I think that, I know that the school district is very sincere about how they would move forward. It has been a multi-year discussion really on the financing, both of the purchase of the land and how they would move forward in the future with the actual construction of the facilities. We have another opportunity in 2 years when the Epic TIF close that there's some additional dollars coming. We can do this. We can have great facilities located here in the city of Verona to take care of the educational needs of the young people in our community, and we can do it with not a dramatic impact on the taxpayers. Not a lot of communities can say that. So certainly we have more things to work out, and I'm confident that the school district will continue to be good partners with the city, but I fully support the proposal that's before us this evening. Mr. McElroy.
Mr. Bears, I will be supportive of this tonight, but I want to be very clear. It's because I know you. I know you've worked hard on the school board. I trust you that you are doing what you think is best for the school district. But I also want to be very clear to say that I don't believe for a minute that the high school is not going to be in the city of Verona. The majority of people who pay taxes for the Verona School District live in the city of Verona or the town of Verona, and I'm pretty sure town of Fitchburg, or city of Fitchburg and the city of Madison aren't going to be willing to do anything to the extent the city of Verona and the town of Verona have
I
done.
didn't mean to imply that.
No, the
that
mayor,
there was
the
a-
mayor got my goat a little bit there, but
I'll tell you this, though. The first visit went over to Sean Paff's office, and they would love to have a campus there. There's no question about that. It doesn't make sense with the way they have chosen by accident of geography and by their deliberate planning. They pushed their development another way. But they recognize what a kind of an asset this can be. And you're right. I think the mass is here. That's precisely why we're doing
I completely understand it, and I want to be clear, as I did at the beginning. Pointed question, pointed comments, not directed at you, certainly not directed at the school board, but I do have reservations and concerns as a person who sits on this body and what it affects the city of Verona. So thank you for your time.
Further questions or comments on this agenda item? We may have additional questions as we
Sure.
move through the agenda. Are there any further questions or comments? If not, the motion before you is to approve ordinance number 14-855, adopting an amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan, changing the designation of lands located within the West End development and the Urbach property located on West Verona Avenue from the current designation of mixed use with primarily commercial land uses to public institutional, with the contingency that the purchase of the land by the school district would have to be final before December 1st of 2015. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item 9A3, I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-14-051, approving a certified survey map to create 5 lots located within the West End Plan Development, with the condition that the proposed certified survey map shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject property by December 1st, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Reekie. Mr. Linder?
This proposed certified survey map would create 5 lots within the West End Plan Development. Lots 1 through 3 would be used for commercial purposes. Lot 4 would be sold to the Verona Area School District for a future school use. And now Lot 1 would contain a future stormwater pond that would be constructed by Vanta Commercial Properties to serve the apartment buildings, lands north of West End Circle and Lot 3. The certified survey map would also dedicate West End Circle and Wall Street as public right-of-ways, as these roads were built to the city standards but not dedicated at the time of construction. Improvements to the stormwater pond on Lot 1 and the cul-de-sac extension of West End Circle Needs to be completed by Vanta Commercial Properties and are anticipated to start in 2015, subject to the Verona Area School District closing on Lot 4. A developer's agreement is required for the road extension and stormwater pond construction. In addition, existing developer's agreement needs to be amended along with the other documents for the property. On December 1st, 2014, the Plan Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval of the certified survey map with the condition.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve Resolution R-14-051, and it would be with the same contingency as the prior motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item 9A4, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-14-052, approving a certified survey map to create 3 lots located at 723 Half Mile Road, with the condition that the certified survey map shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject property by December 1st, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Is there seconded by Ms. Reekie? Mr. Linder?
Thank you. The proposed certified survey map would create 3 lots located at 723 Half Mile Road. Lot 1 would be for future commercial use, and lots 2 and 3 would be sold to the Verona Area School District for future school use. On December 1st, 2014, the Plan Commission voted 4-1 to recommend approval of the certified survey map.
We have a motion and a second. Is there questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, the motion is to approve Resolution R-14-052 with the same contingency as the prior 2 motions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you. Item 9A5, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 14-856, approving a zoning map amendment to rezone multiple parcels located on West Verona Avenue from the current planned development and rural agricultural zoning districts to public institutional and urban commercial zoning districts with, I believe, a couple of conditions. The approval of the zoning map amendment to rezone parcels located within the West End development and urban property shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject properties by December 1st, 2015. And the approval of the zoning map amendment for Lot 1 of the Urbach Certified Survey map and Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map 3416 shall become effective upon the property owners executing a memorandum of understanding with the city to address potential on-site and off-site infrastructure improvements.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Yers. Mr. Linder?
Sure, I got a little more here. The proposed zoning map amendment would rezone multiple parcels located within the West End development and Urbach property located on West Verona Avenue from the current zoning district of planned development and rural agricultural to public institutional and urban commercial. The proposed rezoning would help facilitate a future school use on property that may be purchased by the Verona Area School District and future commercial land uses on portions of Urbach property. The Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 1st, 2014 and voted 3-2 to recommend approval of the zoning map amendment with the conditions listed. After the commission meeting, staff met with city attorney and he advised staff to add condition 2, which we did. The intent of the second condition is to ensure the city is protected if future development on the Urbach property requires on-site or off-site infrastructure improvements. Any potential improvements will be dependent on the type of development proposed for lands being rezoned to urban commercial and are unknown at this time.
You've heard the explanation of the motion. Mr. Sayre, if you would.
One thing that was left out of the ministry report, there was a date on that second condition. The date is actually in the ordinance, and the date was December 1st, 2015. So I would just recommend the council add that date to the condition, the second condition on your motion.
Mr. Linder, Mr. Yers?
Yes.
That's acceptable. Okay. Other questions, comments, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve ordinance number 14-856 with the conditions read by Mr. Linder. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you. Item 9A6. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 14-857, adopting an amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan, changing the designation of lands located on the east side of Locust Drive and immediately south of the Cathedral Point subdivision from a future residential land use to public institutional use, with the condition that the proposed comprehensive plan amendment shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject property by December 1st, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Ricky. Mr. Linder?
Let's see. The proposed amendment to the City of Verona Comprehensive Plan would change the designation of land located on the east side of Locust Drive and immediately south of the Cathedral Point subdivision from a future residential land use to public institutional land use. The Verona Area School District is requesting this plan amendment to accommodate a future elementary school use on the property. Discussion by the Plan Commission included concerns about the potential residential use of the lands east of the Salisbury Lane extension. The Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 1st, 2014, and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. So basically, they want to put a school in Cathedral Heights, is that right?
Cathedral Point.
Cathedral Point, and they're just designating some land for that for future school use.
You've heard the explanation. Questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve ordinance number 14-857 with the conditions read by Mr. Linder. Seeing no questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you. Agenda item 9A7. I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-14-053, approving an extraterritorial certified survey map to create one lot located on the east side of Locust Drive, immediately south of the Cathedral Point subdivision, with the condition that the approval of the extraterritorial CSM shall become effective upon the Verona Area School District acquiring the subject property by December 1st, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Yers. Mr. Linder?
The proposed extraterritorial certified survey map will create one lot located on the east side of Locust Drive, immediately south of the Cathedral Point subdivision. The proposed lot would be approximately 18 acres in size and would be purchased by the Verona Area School District. On December 1st, 2014, the Plan Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of this ordinance.
You've heard the explanation of the agenda item. Questions, comments? Ms. Ricky?
I just wondered if Adam Sayer could explain any comments he had about this.
Mr. Sayre?
Well, the CSM is located in the town. We had discussed with the school district possibly annexing the parcel to the city at this time. The big reason we didn't do that was because if for some reason the referendum fails, you have this parcel kind of hanging out there that you either have to de-annex or somehow deal with. So that's why it's a CSM that's in the town. The town board still has to review it, and so does Dane County as well. I believe the town board is scheduled to take a look at this next week, I believe, or this week, and then ultimately get to Dane County at some time in January as well, and probably hopefully be approved at some point in February. But this is about 18-acre piece of property south of Cathedral Point that, like I said, involves the right-of-way, dedication of right-of-way on the east side of Locust Drive, and the Plan Commission recommended 5-0 for its approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve Resolution R-14-053 with the contingencies outlined by Mr. Linder. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item 9A8, I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-14-054, approving a conditional use permit to allow an indoor commercial entertainment land use with drive-up service at 407 West Verona Avenue, with the conditions: the use of the outdoor seating area is permitted to operate from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. The use of the drive-through is permitted to operate from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days per week. Outdoor patio fencing shall be a minimum of 48 inches tall. The exit for the patio shall be labeled as an exit only. The fence and gate for the outdoor patio shall comply with the requirements from the police department and building inspector.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. Mr. Linder?
Thank you. The proposed conditional use permit would allow MT Treads Bar and Grill to use the former Michael's located at 407 West Verona Avenue as a restaurant. The applicant is proposing to create and use an outdoor seating area on the south side of the building. The applicant is unsure if they will use the existing drive-through, but have requested the option to use it as part of the CUP. The Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 1st, 2014, and voted 5-0 to recommend approval. And I believe the applicant is here to answer some questions if you had any.
You've heard the motion, and we have a motion, we have a second. Questions, comments, discussion? Mr. McIlvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Sayre, could you speak to the drive-up? Is this, did I understand that this was a bar and grill?
Mr. Sayre?
It is a bar and grill. The applicants are still working through the business model. They're not sure if they want to use the drive-through as a drive-through pickup window. So they've requested to keep it, to actually get the approval to keep using it, to have that flexibility. So if they decide to have it a pickup window or of some type, that they'd have that option to be able to use it.
So just
Mr.
as a
McIlvray.
follow-up to that, and I'm not saying this is the case, but is statutorily, within the state of Wisconsin, can you have a drive-up window where there's alcohol served? I know you can in Wyoming and a couple other places, but I just wonder statutorily, I don't want to give the, I see one of the representatives is coming forward.
My name is Tina Bircher, and I'm one of the owners.
Hi,
The
Tina.
drive-up is basically for breakfast and lunch. There would be no alcohol served through the drive-through. We were planning to have an app that's available on the phone where they could call in their meals, and then they could just drive through to pick them up. So it would be more for coffee and soda and that type of thing.
And I wasn't insinuating that you
No, I understand that. I
intended
just
on
wanted to
doing
make
that.
sure
But
that-
I was wondering if that by law we could even allow you to do that. I'd just like to clarify that before we
Right.
tell you that you can. And
Which is fine, because that's not like the end of the world for us. It was just,
Understood.
we had a few customers that said it'd be great if we could drive up and get coffee in the
Sure.
morning, or drive up and pick up an egg sandwich, and, so that was kind of where that came into play.
All right. Thank
Mr.
you.
Sayre, if you would, please.
It will take a liquor license, so we haven't fully vetted the licensing requirements yet because she does have to come back and get that liquor license. So I think at that time we'll take a look at it. We'll speak with the city attorney if necessary as well. But I think it's a good question and valid point.
Further questions, comments? Ms. Reekie?
Just as long as you're there, will you just describe your business
Well, our
proposal?
plan is to bring a full-service breakfast, but with a so it'd be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The breakfast, we'd have a minimal breakfast, but that would be served all day long. Our plans is to kind of bring in the senior citizens that don't have access to locations to have breakfast outside of the area. We plan to work with the Senior Citizen Center to provide them some transportation possibly to and from the location. So we're kind of focusing more on the older generation. We definitely would not decline anybody from coming in for service. The reason for the alcohol is, I know like on the weekends a lot of people like to have a mimosa with their breakfast, or a Bloody Mary, and they want a beer chaser, so you kind of have to bring all that back in, so it's not like, our biggest focus is food, and the bar is just kind of an added bonus.
Mr. Yours?
Yeah, one of my so this is going to be more like a diner atmosphere.
Yes.
And, if I understand, you want to still use some of like the 1950s decor that...
Right. We want to bring in the core of the old gas station that used to be there. So that was kind of how we were bringing in the look. So it'd be like an old diner type atmosphere.
No, and I think this would be a great addition to the city. For a long time we've been talking about a place to have sit-down breakfast and a place to just to gather and to meet and do those kinds of things. And especially out in the West End, as we're trying to develop a downtown, I think this would be a good addition to the city. I'm fully behind it. I remember in college, in Sheboygan, there's a place called Harry's Diner. It's much like what you're proposing, and everyone loves it up there, and it's always a hot spot. You can never find a seat.
Right.
And I hope you have the same kind of success here in Verona. I'm excited for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Years. Other questions, comments? Mr. Steiner?
At the planning commission, you talked about the 57 seats on the inside. Would you address that a little bit and explain the floor plan?
The actual building right now has a very large kitchen in it because he had all the frozen custards machines. So we're going to take half that kitchen and turn it into like bar seating. And the only reason for the bar seating is because a lot of people like to just kind of mingle with everybody and they're not just centered on just their table that they're sitting at. So we would have tables throughout, but there would also be the bar sitting.
So does that take on like an L shape then for
It
your
would
seating?
actually be an L shape, yes, because we don't want to bring it back into a U because then we wouldn't have a place for the food to be served from and that type of thing.
I know the seniors are very excited about your place. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Diaz?
Thank you. I just wanted to say I think the plan looks great, and I wish you good luck. Hopefully you won't need any good luck. Hopefully it'll just work out fine, but just in case. And I'm just really glad to see that something's going there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Other questions, comments? Ms. Doyle?
I'd just like to take a moment to echo some of the previous comments, that it's very exciting to see some activity at that location, and glad to see that you're looking to collaborate with other institutions within the community, because that hopefully that will be a valuable component of your future success. So again, best of luck, and great to see something going in there. Not to go on a negative note, but it's too bad with the idea of collaboration with the senior center that the location off of Paoli didn't work out, because they could just walk right from there. But that's another area where hopefully we can get.
We are close, though, to the Sugar Creek seniors.
Exactly.
So that's, you know,
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of them that used to come into other places and have been kind of limited now because they can't do as much walking, especially in the winters. So.
Right. Well, and I know I think this emerged from one of our downtown meetings at the senior center when we were still going through that planning process, but people had mentioned for bicycling that they wish that there was more access to Michael. So maybe that's something that we can look at going forward too, or just ways to make sure that people can gain access to that site and make sure that there's great walking and pedestrian and biking paths to get there. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, thank you very much. The motion before you is to approve Resolution R-14-054. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder, is there anything else from the Planning Commission?
I think that's probably plenty tonight, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Linder. Great job. We will move to the Finance Committee. Mr. McGilvray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9B1, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the monthly bills in the amount of $1,195,679.65.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. In the way of explanation, 3 of the larger items from tonight's bills, first being to the Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company for our 2015 insurance premiums, $102,763. Second being to the Cornerstone Construction Company for labor on the masonry at the fire and EMS station, that is $101,650. And third being to Findorf Inc. for concrete on the fire and EMS station, that is $262,599.50.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Are there any questions for the Finance Committee or for the city staff? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve the payment of bills in amount totaling $1,195,679.65. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the bills have been approved. Mr. McGilvray, anything else from Finance?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll move then to Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee. Mr. Touche, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9C1, I would like to recommend approval to approve relocation order and right-of-way plat for North Nine Mound Road project.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McGilvray. Mr. Touche.
Prior to acquiring the right-of-way and temporary limited easement along North Nine Mound Road to allow for the grading, road construction, and landscaping of lands outside the existing road right-of-way, the city must approve the right-of-way plat and pass a relocation order. The relocation order provides the legal description for the center line of the road improvements for which the right-of-way and temporary limited easements will be acquired. The right-of-way plat is a graphical depiction of the roadway realignment and the right-of-way and easement areas to be acquired. Following approval by the city, the relocation order and right-of-way plat must be filed with Dane County Clerk. To try to summarize, this is basically a legal process for us to define what we need to negotiate with the property owners along 9 Mound Road so we can begin redeveloping that.
Thank you, Mr. Touche. Mr. McIlvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just for the sake of legality, I'd like to make sure that the resolution number R-14-053, or excuse me, resolution R-14-055, which is the approving the relocation order, be included in the minutes. And I know Mr. Touche is a little under the weather today, so I just wanted to make sure that we had that in for the record.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We've heard the explanation of the motion. Are there questions for the committee or for Mr. Reader? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Resolution R-14-055 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Mr. Touche?
Under item 9C2, I would like to make a motion to approve an amendment for a professional service agreement for the 9 Mound Road / County Highway PD intersection.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McGilvray. Mr. Touche?
Thank you. This agreement is for engineering services for the preparation for final plans, specifications, contract documents, and cost estimate for the reconstruction of County Highway PD from Shady Oak Lane to Woods Road. Services provided under the agreement are for engineering design services for reconstruction of County Highway PD. Gee, sounds like a repeat here. From Shady Oak Lane to Woods Road, a distance of approximately 3,200 feet. County Highway PD will be widened to a 2-lane rural section from a 2-lane rural section to a 4-lane urban section. The design services are included for a free flow left turn lane with a tunnel beneath PD. Also included is the County Highway PD intersection with 9 Mound Road upgrade and signalization. Estimated project costs are $5,200,000. Final plans and specifications to be completed by February 15th, 2015, with a bid opening plan for March of 2015. Compensation will be on a time and material basis not to exceed $269,025. Funding for these services will come from the Tax Increment Financing District number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Touche. We have a motion and a second. You've heard the explanation. Are there questions for the committee or for Mr. Reader? Mr. Gunlock? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. Mr. Touche, anything else in Public Works, Sewer, and Water?
No, sir.
Thank you very much, and we hope you're feeling better soon. We will move next to Personnel Committee. Ms. Doyle, please.
Under Agenda Item 9D1, we have a discussion and possible action regarding the compensation survey and classification study for non-represented personnel. Earlier this year, the council authorized Springstead to conduct the compensation survey and classification study for non-represented personnel. And this was performed in conjunction with 5 other area communities: McFarland, Monona, Middleton, Stoughton, and Sun Prairie. Springstead also conducted a classification study of city positions and has prepared recommendations for a pay plan for the city of Verona. Earlier in November, the Personnel Committee met to review the preliminary findings of the study and provide feedback to Springstead. We also met earlier this evening to go over some of those recommendations, and Ann from Springstead is here with us tonight to present the report and recommendations.
Thank you very much for your patience. Mr. Burns, did you have something you wanted to say first, Annette?
No,
okay. And thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you. Appreciate being here. I do have some handouts for the council this evening.
Make sure you talk into that mic. this one. Thank you. I don't think so. Is the green button, is the green light on?
There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Technology. Good evening, members of the council. Thank you for the introduction, Ms. Doyle. My name is Ann Antonsen, and I'm a vice president and consultant with Springstead. And I was the project director for conducting this study for the city of Verona, as well as the 5 other communities that participated in different phases of the study. So tonight we have a final report for presentation to you. We also have a PowerPoint presentation, of which I have up on the screen, as well as giving you a hard copy as well. So tonight we just kind of like to cover what the objectives were that were identified by the city for conducting this study, the process that we utilized for conducting the study, the findings that we have, and then recommendations for the city moving forward based on the results of this study. Every computer's different. You have to find the right button. So just some of the objectives that were identified by the city for conducting this study. The city really wanted to do a comprehensive review and evaluation of the city's current classification and compensation program. A comprehensive review had not been done in a very long time. The city does not have an established compensation plan for positions within the city, and the city really wanted to review wage and benefit levels both internally and relative to the market. The goals of the study were to develop a compensation system that looked at how positions within the city of Verona related to one another. So the goal of that was to ensure that positions within the city that had comparable levels of job requirements and job responsibilities as far as education, experience, other job requirements, and knowledge, skills, and abilities, that those positions were compensated at a level that was consistent with one another within the organization. And then also to do a very comprehensive market review to compare how positions compared to similar positions in comparable organizations in the area labor market. And then finally, to look at developing administrative guidelines, policies, procedures to implement and maintain the study recommendations moving forward. So a little bit about the terminology that we'll be referring to tonight. Job evaluation, that's really the tool that we use for evaluating the relationships of positions within the city of Verona. Then internal equity, that's looking at making sure that positions, again, which are consistent with one another, are compensated at a level that is consistent within the organization. Pay philosophy is the long-term strategy of the organization, which includes defining your market area, defining how you want to compare to that market area, the balance of the internal relationships and the market competitiveness of positions, how you work employee performance within your compensation plan, and then administering the system moving forward. So it's something that's not just a goal for working in 2014 or 2015, but moving forward and growing with the city. A pay grade, you will see when we show you the proposed compensation plan, there will be different levels within that compensation plan, and each grade is where positions with similar job evaluation factors are assigned to the same grade level. Midpoint is simply the midpoint of the salary range. When we get to the structure of the salary range, the midpoint of the market data is the information that we used for developing the recommended compensation plan for the city. Progression through pay grades, that's how the city uses that compensation plan and allows for employees to move through the pay grade assigned to their position. Dependent on the structure of the plan, typically you look at time in position, performance of individual employees, or combinations of different factors. The methodology that we used for conducting this study, we met with city administration. We had a group meeting with department heads to kind of go over the process and their participation as a part of the process and their responsibilities for collecting and reviewing information as a part of the study. We then conducted one-on-one meetings with department heads to become familiar with city operations. When we do these studies, we like to become familiar with the structure of the individual organization we're conducting the study for. You know, every city and every department is structured a little bit differently, so we like to become familiar with that structure, the positions, the number of staff in their departments, the level of type of service that they're providing, any concerns that they have with the compensation or benefit levels of positions within their organization, and just become familiar with those operations and some of the questions we need to ask, some of the information we need to look for and analyze as we're moving through the different phases of the study. At that same time, we also held employee orientation meetings to allow employees the opportunity to become familiar with the study and the process that we would be utilizing. So we identified the objectives that the city had laid out for conducting the study, the process that we would be utilizing for the study, their participation in the study. We had employees complete questionnaires to provide us information about their positions and the responsibilities and the requirements and different factors that apply to their positions. Those questionnaires were designed to also get supervisor feedback. So they're designed to get both employee input and supervisor input without supervisors altering any of the information that employees provided. We also gathered information on current job descriptions, current structures, current organizational charts across the city. We then evaluated positions based on job responsibilities and job requirements to look at the internal relationships of positions. We also obtained very comprehensive market salary and benefits information from multiple regional organizations in conjunction with the other 5 communities that Ms. Doyle identified as a part of the study. We then developed a salary line, which I'll show you in just a couple of moments. We're using the midpoint of the salary survey information and the job evaluation factors for each position within the city. We then assigned each position to a pay grade within that compensation plan, and then developed implementation options, which we will be introducing to you this evening. So as part of the salary survey, we did a very comprehensive compensation and benefits survey. Our survey included questions regarding the compensation structures of the participating organizations. So did they have an open range system? Did they have a step system? Did they have an adopted pay system within their organization? If they had steps, we asked questions as to how many steps they had, the percentage between steps, and how employees moved through the range. We also gathered information as to whether they provided any additional types of compensation, such as longevity, performance pay, educational incentives, or any other types of compensation. The group of 6 communities that participated in this study, they selected 47 public sector organizations to collect information from as a part of the study, and 47 was way too many to actually put on a slide in a PowerPoint presentation. So those are identified in the report that I've given you this evening. Those are on page 3 of the report that I've distributed to each of you. There are 47 different communities that were included, which included cities, villages, some school districts as a part of that 47 groups of communities. Those that you see in bold are the ones that we were actually able to collect information from. We had some difficulty, which took some time to gather that market survey information. We made multiple contacts. The 6 communities also made multiple contacts to try to obtain the survey information from each of those communities. But we were able to get the information from 29 of the 47 identified communities. We also gathered information from the Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor Statistics to try and bring some private sector information into the mix as well as part of our analysis. So those were the 47 communities that were selected. There were 49 benchmark positions that were included in the survey, and those 49 benchmark positions were identified by the 6 communities in the request for proposal that was distributed at the beginning of the study. So they selected the 49 benchmark positions. Those 6 communities also identified the summary of the position and their requirements for the purposes of conducting the study. Of those 49 benchmark positions, there were 29 of those that were a match for the City of Verona positions. So we had 28 positions that we were able to line up with the market comparisons. For our findings, since most of the city positions do not have salary ranges, when we did the comparison, and it's just for comparative purposes, we used the current salaries for City of Verona positions, and we compared those to the maximum salaries, and in some cases, actual salaries of the communities that participated in the survey, because there were some communities that, just like the City of Verona, do not yet have established salary ranges for their positions. So some of those were actual ranges as well. In Appendix 1 of the report that I distributed to you is the comprehensive salary survey information. So if you turn to that page in Appendix 1, you can see the positions that were a match up within the City of Verona and for the 47 benchmark positions that were included. So these are listed with position title, the number of responses that received. So this was of the 29 communities that responded to the survey, how many of those reported that they had a position that was similar to the positions that were included as benchmarks in the survey. And I just want to identify these were total responses. This is not necessarily the information that was used specifically for the City of Verona. When we did the survey, you know, the sizes of the communities that, of the 6 communities varied in population from 7,000 to 30,000. So we had a wide spread of communities that were included in the survey. So when we did the analysis, we narrowed it down, so we made sure that the information that was included in the survey analysis was a direct match to the City of Verona and the position requirements within the City of Verona. So 26 responses does not mean that we used all of that data in the analysis. We really geared it specifically to the City of Verona. Then we have the average of full-time equivalents and the average years of service in the next 2 columns. Not every community provided that information, so that's not going to be an exact match to the market data, but it kind of gives you a guideline as to how many positions and how many years of service their incumbents had. Then the next column is the average midpoint. So for each position, this is the average midpoint. This is the number that we used for drawing the salary line that I'll show you in just a moment, which created the outline of the compensation plan that we're bringing to you as proposed this evening. Then for each position, for the minimum salary, we have the lowest minimum, the highest minimum, and the average minimum salary. Then the average, the lowest and the highest midpoint, and then for maximum salary, we have the lowest maximum, the highest maximum, and then the average maximum salary of the survey data. Then on the next page, we have the comparison to the City of Verona current salaries. We have 5 positions that have salary ranges, so we can compare those as to how they compare to the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum. So for the minimum salaries for those 5 positions, they're slightly above market, but well within the realms of the guidelines that are industry standards for comparisons. Typically, when we're looking at how positions compare to the market, if a position falls within 5% above or below market, that's typically considered to be consistent with the market unless the organization has a different pay philosophy. So they may have a pay philosophy where they want to be at 102% of market or 97% of market or right on market. So then those guidelines will change. But typically, 5% above or below is considered to be consistent. Then for midpoint salaries for those 5 positions that we have ranges for, they start to fall below market, getting close to that 5% line. And then for maximum salaries, and again, we're comparing the current salaries of city positions. So this is just for illustrative purposes only. So you can see how your current salaries compare to the maximum salaries that are provided in the other organizations. So those looking at that, the salaries are just over 11% on average below. You have some that are competitive, some that fall very far below, and we have one that falls slightly above, but very slightly above. So the majority are below. Then looking at this, and this falls in relation to the market as well. We had some internal pay relationship inequities that exist within the city, and this is very standard if you don't have an adopted pay plan and ranges for positions, because you have positions being hired kind of all over the board, depending on what the market is, what you're looking for, the talents of the incumbent. So we had some internal relationships that had existed. And then in discussions with city, there were concerns for potential employee recruitment and retention of certain positions throughout the city. Then for job evaluation, I've talked a lot about internal relationships of positions, what we used for evaluating positions, and this is based on requirements of positions, not individual employee qualifications. So we had the SAFE job evaluation system was utilized for evaluating positions within the city of Verona. This is a system that was developed specifically for use in the public sector. It has been tested in federal court under an EEOC claim in a county in Georgia and been found to be an equitable system for evaluating the relationships of positions within an organization. And it's periodically updated to account for changes in services, changes in technology, etc. So the 9 job factors that are included are training and ability, which includes formal education, as well as any special requirements of positions, such as licenses, certifications, or specialized training, the prior work experience that's required of the position, the level of work of the position, so is it entry level on up to a management level position, the human relations skills requirements of the position, so what's their responsibility of working with or through others, both within and outside the organization, what's the purpose, what's the frequency of those communications, the physical demands of the position, the working conditions, which involves both environmental and physical hazards, as well as the level of mental effort or stress that's involved in the position. Looks at how independently the position is either allowed or required to function, impact on end results, so the types of decisions that are required to be made, the actions taken by an individual, what's the impact on the organization, what's the level of consequences, and then the supervisory responsibilities of the position. So that's the internal relationship piece. So we took that market survey data that you have in Appendix 1 and the job evaluation results of positions, and we drew just a linear regression analysis that ties the midpoints and the job evaluation points of the 28 positions that were a match up to the market survey data. So each of those data points is where a position falls relative to that line. You are going to have positions that fall a little bit above or a little bit below because there's usually not a direct match up to the market. So there's similarity, and we try to match up positions as close to the positions within the city as possible. So looking at pay philosophy as part of the discussion was looking at providing fair and equitable compensation to employees within the city of Verona, looking at balancing the external market with the internal relationships of positions within the organization, looking at developing a competitive pay structure that could be maintained by the city moving forward with consideration of the city's fiscal resources, so the availability of funds you have for implementing and maintaining your compensation program, looking at building in a performance-based component for step increases for individual employees. So when you see the compensation plan for employees to move from one step to another step, they do need to meet the requirements and the performance standards of their position in order for them to receive that increase. And then making sure that we developed an understandable compensation program for the elected officials of the city of Verona, for administration, for ease in maintaining the system moving forward, to the employees of the organization, and also to the residents of the city of Verona. So the proposed pay plan you see in your PowerPoint, this is also in Appendix 2 of the compensation plan. So the proposed compensation plan is designed with 25 grades within the system. There's a 6% spread between grades. There's 9 steps per grade with a 2.75% spread between the steps in the system. This is consistent with what's going on in the marketplace in the regional area of looking at developing step systems and the number of steps and the percentage between steps, but also being able to create a compensation plan where your starting wages are competitive in the marketplace, your midpoint wages are competitive in the marketplace, and your top wages are competitive in the marketplace. We then assigned positions to the pay grade, and this is not in the PowerPoint because, again, there's too much information to see on the screen, but in Appendix 3 of the report that I've given you is the positions within the city of Verona, the grade to which they've been assigned, and then for space-saving purposes, what is the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum of that grade. So you can see we have positions assigned from a 5 up to a 23, so there's room on each end for new positions that are created, either entry level or if there are positions that are created or changed at the top end as well, as far as job requirements for you to have some place to place those positions. Once we looked at where the positions fell, then we placed individual employees within that compensation plan. So where did they fall in relation to the plan? The first thing that we did, since the study was conducted in 2014 and all of the market survey data was for 2014, which is what the initial compensation plan was that was developed, and looking at implementation for 2015, the first thing we did is we adjusted the compensation plan and individual employees with a cost of living increase for 2015. And we did a 2% base increase to both the compensation plan and for individual employees, because that's kind of the standard that is going on out in the market these days. So the 2% base increase for all employees is a cost of just under $56,000. And that is an annual, so that would be the full cost for wages for 2015 for the 2% increase. The next step that we looked at, and the report goes into more detail on these costs as well, that is on pages 11 and 12 that get you a little bit more summary information for this. So of the city's 60 employees, when we looked at then, okay, we've done this cost of living increase, now looking at moving employees into the proposed compensation plan. 8 of the city's 60 employees have a wage that currently falls below the proposed range for their position. So we looked at, okay, how do we move those 8 employees onto the system? We move those to the minimum of the range, and the cost to bring those employees to the minimum is just over $21,000. And again, that's an annual cost for that. Then we have 52 of the city's employees who have a current wage which falls within the range of assigned to their position. So we then said, well, we want to move them onto an actual step in the proposed range for their position. So to move those 52 employees onto an actual step that's closest to their current wage without the employee seeing a decrease in pay, that cost is just under $37,000. So a total annual cost of option 1 and option 2 is just over $58,000. This increases the market comparability of your compensation plan and addresses the internal equity of positions within the city. We then looked at, as an additional option, that the city could place employees on the proposed wage scale based on their years of service with the city. So, for instance, if an employee had been with the city for 7 years and their current wage fell below step 7 of the compensation plan, what would it cost to move that employee to step 7? So looking at movement of employees based on years of service in their current position, the total annual cost of that is just over $144,000. This creates a system that is competitive and comparable to the market and really looks at putting positions within there based on their responsibilities, their years of service, and being internally equitable within the compensation plan. And again, these costs are based on a full year and include wages only. Then looking at ongoing administration, looking at establishing guidelines for maintaining the system moving forward. The typical indicators for establishing those guidelines, CPI, although that's not used as much as it used to be because the CPI figures can be very inconsistent. The best factor that most are using is once you have selected who your market group is, looking at those comparable organizations and doing a review of what types of changes they're doing to their compensation plan on an annual basis so you are able to maintain a compensation plan that remains consistent with your established marketplace. Then looking at adjusting the pay ranges on an annual basis and the wages of individual employees. And then again, step adjustments that are based on individual employee performance. So in order to get a step increase, they would need to meet the performance standards established for their position. Then we also did a comprehensive review of fringe benefits, and there's a chart in Appendix 4 for you to review all of the individual benefits, but overall your benefits package is fairly consistent with the market. There are some areas where you might have a little bit more generous benefit and some areas where you might be providing a little bit less, but overall they're fairly consistent, so we're not recommending any changes at this time. So looking at conclusions, we looked at developing a fair and equitable compensation program and plan for employees in a competitive and changing labor market. The labor market has been changing since the economy has started to improve because lots of organizations are starting to look at their compensation plan. It's getting a little bit more competitive out in the marketplace. Looking at a compensation plan that looks at the internal relationships of positions as well as the market competitiveness. Establishing a market position that's fiscally responsible with the public resources, so the tax dollars that are available to provide the employee wages, and then just consistent administration of policies and procedures across all city departments and all positions. With that, I guess I'd open it up for questions.
Mr. Burns first.
Yeah, I just wanted to report that earlier this evening, the Personnel Committee reviewed this information, and the recommendation coming out of the Personnel Committee was to recommend adoption of the pay plan and compensation plan based on the option number 3, but to implement that with a cost of living increase on the first of the year on January 1, and then to implement the move for employees to their steps on the compensation plan on their anniversary dates. And then for employees that are not at the maximum of their range, they would continue to progress through that plan on their anniversary dates in subsequent years. I also wanted to note that the costs that Ms. Antonsen went through in the report, as she'd indicated, are wages only. They're also based on what the full year impact would be. And as part of this process, our finance director, Cindy Engelke, also did take a look at this option that we had discussed with the Personnel Committee of implementing an anniversary date for movement through steps, and also looked at fringe benefit costs, FICA costs, and WRS costs, as well as looking at levy and non-levy supported funds. And based on that analysis, looking at the levy supported funds cost of the wage impact, the cost is $119,852.94. When you add in the roll-up FICA and WRS, it's $138,222.41. And in our 2015 budget, we had budgeted a total of $140,000 in personnel contingency for levy-supported funds. That includes $130,000 in the general fund and $10,000 in the fire district fund. So that amount is just within the amount that we have budgeted for the personnel contingencies.
So with that, we will open it for questions, comments, or potential motions. Mr. Yurs?
I just want to say, as a member of the Personnel Committee, I wholeheartedly support option 3 for a number of reasons. I think it makes sure that we can fully implement the plan, and as Mr. Burns just mentioned, we do have the funds to be able to do that this year, and it'll bring everybody up to speed. It'll do so in a fair way, with everyone getting their cost of living the first of the year and then make their step on their anniversary date. And also we can respect and also reward the loyalty of our longtime employees here to the city. And I think that's something we should do. And I also like the fact that this will be something that's maintained from year to year, and that we're not going to have any more big jumps, and that we can just kind of keep things maintained and make sure that we're treating our employees the best that we can. So I urge all of you to support option 3, and that's all I have to say, really.
Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. McGilvray?
I'm just looking through some things here and how this would be applied. I'm wondering about the performance evaluation. Would that be performed? Would we have that now before this would be taken into or would go into effect? Because under option 3, it would be my understanding that the 8 positions that have been identified as being under the market value would be adjusted right away.
We'll let Mr. Burns respond.
Yeah, with both options 1, 2, and 3, we are talking about, and I believe the recommendation from Personnel Committee is that the movement to whatever step, whether that be the minimum step or a step within the plan, that would take place on their anniversary date. So for those 8 positions, they would also have their cost of living adjustment on January 1st, but the recommendation would be that they would move to the minimum or whichever step on their anniversary date. In response to the question about the performance component and how that would work, we currently are doing evaluations on city employees, and what's recommended as part of the compensation study is that employees would need to have at least satisfactory performance in order to continue to progress through the pay plan. So if they're at step 4 and on their anniversary date in the following year, that they would go to step 5, that they would need to have at least satisfactory performance. It's not intended or not recommended at this point that it be a variable, that their amount of their increase is dependent on their performance, but that as a condition of progressing through the steps that they would have to have satisfactory performance.
I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just going to put it out there. I have some serious reservations about doing that at this time. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the study, and I totally agree with what Mr. Yurs said as far as compensating people who have been here a long time. But I have some reservations to blanketly applying this in some very specific situations, and I'm not at liberty to discuss that right now. But I've been made aware of things that would make me very uncomfortable to do that.
Thank you, Mr. McIlvray. Other questions, comments, potential motions? Ms. Doyle?
I'd just like to take a moment to thank Bill and his leadership in this compensation study. He really took initiative to really try and get people together, and I know that this was something very helpful in trying to be more competitive with the private sector in the current landscape. So really appreciate all the time and effort that Bill and the rest of our staff put into this, and as well as Ann and Springstead. Really appreciate all this information coming forward and feel comfortable making a motion to go ahead and support option 3, initiating the COLA increase on January 1st and the comp plan step increase on anniversary date.
We have a motion by Ms. Doyle. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Yurs. We have a motion and a second. We are open for discussion on the motion. Further discussion, comments, questions? Mr. Linder?
Is there anything more you can say, Mac, about, I guess,
I don't think it would be fair to
okay.
any of the people that.
But not specific people, but what Bill had said that you didn't agree with? I mean, is it?
I would disagree in increasing the pay in a specific instance, because I'm not entirely sure that, I just don't think that would be appropriate at this time. I just do not. And it's a very specific instance, and as far as the COLA goes, I think that was part of the budgeting plan, and I think that's entirely appropriate, but what we're talking about is option 3, which is everything, and I can't agree with that adjustment in this case.
Ms. Doyle?
If I may, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think your concern is just with not having increases tied to performance right off the bat, as you would feel more comfortable if performance was taken into consideration before making any step increases or service increases.
That is correct, and my understanding of the option 3, and if I'm wrong, my understanding is moving forward it's all in. It's not just the COLA. It's bringing them up putting them at a step. And I'm not entirely sure that the step is the right place in a very specific instance, that's all.
Ann, did you want to respond to that at all?
Yes, for option 3, it is putting all employees on a specific step based on years of service. But again, we're looking at tying performance to step placement as well.
Mr. Touche?
I'll yield to Mac right now.
Mr. McIlvray?
That was my question initially. The step performance and moving whoever it is into a position is tied to their performance, but if we're not doing a performance evaluation out of the gate, how do we establish whether or not it's appropriate for them to be at a step?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, the recommendation would, for the plan, would be that employees' movement through steps in the pay plan would be based on an at least satisfactory performance. I think that if there's a specific situation where there's a performance issue, we should address that on an individual case with that employee. That I don't see that affecting the structure of the pay plan. I think that's something that could be dealt with individually for that employee. I think the integrity of the plan would be adopting the plan and adopting the policies, and one of the policies would be that movement through the steps would be based on satisfactory performance. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I am not disagreeing with the plan. I wholeheartedly I agree with the plan, the adjustment for COLA, but if we are adopting this and applying it en masse to our employees, we are effectively saying there's no evaluation based on performance. And this is a very specific instance. I know we're trying, my problem is we're doing this across the board at this point, right here tonight. And if nothing else, I'd like the opportunity to maybe discuss this a little bit more at an administrative level before we adopt this particular plan tonight. That's my only request. I know, is it a time factor because it's the end of the year? We're trying to get this in place by the end of the year. I can respect that.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I think that the timing is a factor. I think there was a desire to try to complete this prior to the end of the year so that it can be authorized and ready to implement effective January 1st. I would also say that as part of adopting the pay plan, that and perhaps Ms. Antonsen can speak to this, that I think it's important that as a policy level we are not looking at just individual employees or individual situations when we're considering the plan as a whole. I think that if there is a particular concern with an employee, I think certainly I'd like to discuss that with you privately, and that's something that we can take a look at and how that concern would be addressed. But I think making modifications to the plan for an individual employee at this stage would not be the best way to handle that. And I guess I would look to Ms. Antonsen as well as for recommendations on how we separate the plan from individual employees within the plan.
Yeah, and we do this in many organizations, and what we're looking at is adopting the plan and implementation options. And in specific organizations where they may have an individual employee or employees that are not meeting the performance standards of their positions, then they address that as a separate issue outside of the compensation plan and adoption of that plan. So it becomes specifically how do you handle that individual employee based on performance issues rather than, holding off on looking at the entire plan, because that's one piece. Individual employee performance is a separate issue. So if there is a specific issue of an employee or an employee's, then that needs to be addressed either through the compensation plan or through other avenues if there are performance issues.
Mr. Touche?
I'm trying to relate this to my private job and career. And so if I understand this correct, if we adopt this plan, it sets a rate at what we believe an employee should be compensated at upon their annual review. So whether it's January, February, March, at some point throughout the year, we're going to address them. If their performance is below standard, below our expectations, does that mean we have to implement? I think this is going to address what Mac is after. Does that mean we have to implement the plan for that employee?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I think that is something that we could take a look at, that as we're doing employee evaluations, that if there's an employee that currently is below or not meeting satisfactory expectations based on their current performance and current performance evaluation, that we would look at that as a factor for that employee rather than moving them to the step. It's hard for me to speak in generalities without looking at a specific situation, but I think the concept would be if there's a concern with an individual employee performance, let's look at that individually for that employee. And if part of our philosophy going forward is that movement through the pay plan is conditioned on satisfactory performance, I think that's a factor we could look at.
Mr. Yurs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, and I completely understand your concerns, Mr. McGilvery. And I think the only thing that's going to be blanketly implemented on January 1 would be the COLA. And then everything, your step, you wouldn't be placed to your step until your anniversary date. So we wouldn't be implementing, everybody wouldn't be put to their step, per se, on January 1. That would depend on which date you were hired.
Mr. McGilvery?
A question for the committee or Ann, if I may. Excuse me. For the committee or Ann. So, and I'm not even sure if the particular employee I'm talking about is within the 8 employees that fall short of the proposed range for their position. That is the provision that I guess I'm speaking to directly. So if we're making an adjustment, when would that adjustment happen under this plan and the adoption of this plan?
That would occur on their anniversary date based on satisfactory performance.
Okay. And yes, that answers my question. I can be supportive of the plan. But I do think that this is important enough that it needs to be addressed quickly.
Other questions or comments? Questions, comments? You have all, Mr. Linder?
Just for clarification, so I understand, so on January 1st, they get a cost of living adjustment, and then on their anniversary date, they get a review and they figure out which step they go into? Is that basically the gist of it?
Mr. Burns?
Or am I missing something?
Well, it's correct. On January 1st, they would have a cost of living adjustment. That 2% would be applied towards employees. As far as where they would be placed on their anniversary date, they would be placed on a step considering their years of service to the city and conditional on satisfactory performance. Currently, at least for department head positions, we are doing evaluations on an annual basis, so we would look at their most recent evaluation. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the recommendation is not that you'd have a variable pay for performance plan where somebody does outstanding work and they get placed at an extra, they move up 2 steps because of that. The recommendation is that the steps be based on years of service, but that conditional upon moving to the next step or to the appropriate step, that you have to have at least satisfactory performance.
Mr. Linder?
What do you do with an employee if you have 2 employees both been here 5 years and one's heads and shoulders above the other one? How do you handle that?
Mr. Burns?
With this?
Under this plan, if those 2 employees both have at least satisfactory performance, they would both move to that next step based on their years of service. The scope of this and the recommendation is not implementing a merit pay program. If there's interest, that's something that the city could potentially look at in the future, but the scope of this was to look at first establishing a compensation plan, and I think that this is a good step, and I think that this is a significant enough change that it makes sense to start here, implement this, see how it's going, and then if we want to consider other options in the future, that's something we can look at.
Mr. Linder?
Since I first looked at this about 40 minutes ago, is there one of these options a performance-based where better employees get paid more than ones who maybe only have satisfactory compared to, exceptional reviews? Is one of these plans like that?
Mr. Burns?
Options?
That's not one of the options in the recommendations from this study.
Is there a reason for that? Is that just not good practice with the city?
Ann?
Well, the first goal for the city was to put into place a compensation plan because the city has never had a compensation plan. So the first goal was to put a structure in place, which was a big step forward for the city. Once you get that in place, if you determine that you want to create more of a pay for performance plan, that can be built in, but you need to put a lot of other processes in place to go along with a pay for performance plan. You have to have a very well-defined, performance evaluation system, a lot of training. The plan needs to be structured a little bit differently so that you have the ability to truly distinguish between the performance of individuals. So it becomes a lot more complicated. So the discussions with the Personnel Committee and looking at implementing a plan was to put a structure in place, base it on individual employee performance for movement between the steps, and just get the first step of the system in place.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering, so, thank you.
Further questions or comments? You've all heard the motion. The motion is on implementing option 3. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Ms. Doyle, anything else in Personnel Committee?
No, that is all for this evening.
Okay, we want to thank the committee, and I would echo your comments on thanking Mr. Burns and Ann for all the great work that you did. Mr. Yurs spoke to it about that we value our employees. We certainly do. We talk about it all the time that our employees are second to none, and they are our most valuable asset. So I fully support the action that the council took. So with that, we are under old business. Do we have any motions at this time under old business?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Yurs?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The Common Council may reconvene in open session to take action on the closed session item.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Linder. This motion requires a roll call vote. Ms. Schofield, if you'd read the roll, please.
Alderperson McGilvery?
Mac? Roll call vote.
Alderperson Rieke?
Kind of boring.
Aye.
Alderperson Steiner?
Aye.
Alderperson Touche?
Yes.
Alderperson Yurs? Alderperson Diaz?
No.
Alderperson Doyle?
No.
Alderperson Linder?
Aye.
And the motion to go into closed session passes on a 6-2 vote. We are back in open session. We are on agenda item number 11, which is new business, discussion and possible action regarding approval of operator licenses. Ms. Schofield, do we have any operator licenses this evening?
We have 3 licenses from Laurel Wilkie at Pasquale's, Brianne Karn at Monty's, and Jonathan Mash at Gray's Tide House.
You have heard the applicants. Is there any motion to approve?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Rieke. Discussion on the applications? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the operator licenses have been approved. Agenda item number 12, announcements. Mr. Steiner?
The Verona Historical Society will be meeting Wednesday, the 17th. It is a very fun agenda. Andy Scott has taken electronic copies of all the photography that we have been able to scratch together this past year, and we are going to blow them up onto the big screen down at the Senior Center. And I'm asking anyone in the city who knows old people to come to this meeting at 3 p.m. at the Senior Center on the 17th. We want to identify these citizens of the city of Verona from 100 years ago forward. It's going to be a wonderful event. We're all looking forward to it. Then on Thursday the 18th, we're going to celebrate one of these old folks, a guy named Ernie Johnson, past mayor, a businessman for 65 years in the city, a lifelong resident of the city of Verona, back when it was just 4 corners and 200 people and 4 businesses. He's 105. December 2nd, he was 105. And a civic group will be celebrating his life at the Parish Center at St. Andrew on the 18th, starting at 6:30. A potluck meal. If you're interested in participating, give me a call, 845-6004. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Any other announcements this evening? Any other announcements? If not, we wish you all the safe and happy holidays and look forward to seeing everyone after the first of the year. With that, a motion to adjourn would be in order. We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McGilvray. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.